What's your first impression when you think of poetry? Many Westerners picture a poet waxing eloquent with meaning and emotion through a nuanced assembly of verses, rhythms, and rhymes. For this reason, we often find poems difficult to discern. Don't you wish the poetic process was shorter, simpler, more accessible? Well, that can definitely be arranged. But I must warn, be careful what you wish for. Today, I will introduce you to a style of poetry that, at first glance, ticks all those boxes. It's shorter, simpler, and accessible to all ages and abilities. But instead of telling you what it's called, I'll let it speak for itself. What am I? Take a look at these 5 poems. What characteristics do they all share? Ah, the ancient pond, as a frog takes the plunge, sound of water. The white dew on each thorn of the bramble, a dewdrop. One by one, everyone has left, autumn wind. Autumn moonlight, a worm digs silently into the chestnut. A heavy cart rumbles by, peonies tremble. Okay, now let's list some common characteristics of these poems. How many did you spot? First, the poem focuses primarily on the 5 senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. The poem conveys a potent message in a concise way. Fewer words and more meaning. The poem always has 3 lines. Some say the poem must follow a 5-7-5 syllable pattern. This is an oversimplification. What is true is this: the poem has a limited number of syllables per line, the second line containing the most syllables. The poem always makes reference to the seasons and nature. There are usually 2 contrasting topics, linked together in a clever way. Sometimes the poem sounds incomplete. So, what am I? You guessed it, I'm a haiku. So, where did I come from? And why am I important? Let's watch this video about the history of haiku.
Reading and writing poetry was a necessary social requirement during the Heian period of Japanese culture. It was during this time that short forms of poetry became popular. The strict and conformed lifestyles of the Japanese were reflected in their poetry, so a 3-line, 5-7-5 syllable format was adopted. This form went through many rebirths and was accepted into many different social classes. Haiku was introduced as a form of peasant poetry. The poet Matsuo Basho took this form and infused a new sensitive and emotional flair, and it soon became known as haiku. A wild sea, in the distance over Sado, the Milky Way. The she-cat, grown thin from love and barley. How wild the sea is, and over Sado Island, the river of heaven. Basho transformed haiku to mirror the perfect Zen ideal. According to the original haiku poets of Japan, haiku should give the reader an observation of a natural, commonplace event in the simplest of words without verbally tricking them.
We're now on our way to creating our own haiku. But first, we must understand what goes into one and how to accurately replicate its essence. So fill up your poetry pocket with the necessities. Here are 3 components to consider: content, form, and design. To really understand haiku, you must be familiar with the concept of kigo, or seasonal words. Kigo are what differentiates the haiku from other similar forms of Japanese poetry. Kigo give the verse a bank of memories and images to invoke seasonal association in the mind of the reader, without drowning the poem in words. I present to you these lists as an aid in your own writing, as well as in appreciating the haiku of other poets. The first category of kigo is season. What season do you associate with the vernal equinox? Of course, spring. The second category of kigo is elements of the heavens. What season do you associate with the word snow? Ah, yes, winter. The third category of kigo is elements of the earth. What season do you associate with the phrase turning leaves? Autumn. The fourth category of kigo is animals. What season do you associate with crabs? Summer. The fifth category of kigo is plants. What season do you associate with cherry blossoms? Of course, spring. The sixth category of kigo is humanity. What season do you associate with ice skating? Ah, winter. Halloween? Autumn. Sunburns? Summer. To add authenticity to your haiku, you must understand its form. To the left are some tips that will act as structural parameters. To the right are Japanese terms relating to the various philosophical attitudes and stylistic approaches of haiku writing. First, let's consider style. According to the principle of chasse, a haiku must be based on an actual experience, not imagined, and describe a current observation, not a memory or an abstraction. According to the principle of karumi, a haiku must maintain a light tone. This poetry style was intended for the common man, and therefore must be personal and comfortable. A common approach to writing haiku is to mention 2 separate images and then, in the third line, link them together in a surprising way. This is referred to as renso. Hosomi is a principle that advocates for the use of short, simple, and understated language. Haiku should be modest and unpretentious. Fukyo figuratively translates to poetic dementia. Haiku masters of old delighted in being mad poets. Having an eccentric view of the world is consistent with the haikai spirit of being less formal and more playful. Wabi is the philosophy that values austere beauty. That is, beauty in loneliness, misery, poverty, and simplicity. Sabi is a philosophy that values quiet elegance. That is, elegance in loneliness or deprivation, in antiquity and simplicity. Now that you understand the essence of haiku, let's move on to some helpful writing tips. Here are the structural parameters of haiku writing. There are always exceptions, but do your best to adhere to these points. There's no need for a title. Also, no rhyming. Use punctuation sparingly. Instead, consider using the kireji cutting. The verse should be compressed, but not choppy, so be careful with omitting articles. Use action verbs and avoid abstract verbs like have and be. Use present tense only, not past or future tense. Use adjectives and adverbs sparingly. The emphasis is on the image, not the poet, so avoid using first person. Also, don't add extra words just to fulfill the syllable count. Lastly, avoid redundancy of seasonal references. For example, in the phrase spring blossoms, both words reference spring. Choose one. In this case, blossoms. To conclude this presentation, I would like to provide you with some design resources. Here we have a Kegel graphic organizer. Simply choose a season, a concept, and a few key terms. Here we have the 5 senses graphic organizer. Choose your topic and then brainstorm words and phrases that correspond to the 5 senses. Remember those tips I gave you? We can turn them into a checklist. Use it to assess whether your haiku is well organized and stylistically authentic. Are you ready to write your haiku? Refer back to this Prezi at any time to monitor your progress or to get re-inspired. If you're unsure about writing a haiku, try out an app like this one. It's called Haiku Poem Interactive, designed by Read, Write, Think. Now get started. Do your best, and remember to have fun. Thanks for watching.